She takes me off. I'll pull
What happened? How did we get to where we are today? Because for a while, flying was actually very glamorous. So in 1914, Percival Franzler saw an opportunity. By offering a regular air service between St. Petersburg in Florida and Tampa, he could actually make a profit and cut travel times between 1/6 and 1/60th of the time it would have regularly taken. Thus, the world's first commercial airline was born. See, after World War I, as America found itself with an excess of pilots, attention turned to planes like the Ford Trimotor, which, with a capacity of 12 passengers, could run profitable businesses. Thus, airlines started looking into passenger service, away from the simple airmail they had previously done. All the while, airplane innovation continued, with the Boeing 247 or the famed DC-3, which could carry up to 32 passengers. Then, as World War II came, plane makers shifted towards fighter planes, and commercial aviation took a back seat. But then came... So after World War II, many of the inventions from before the war, such as the pressurized cabin, became really popular in aircraft such as the TWA Constellation or the DC-6. And as the 50s saw the introduction of jet planes, such as the Boeing 707 or de Havilland Comet, flying suddenly became a lot faster and more comfortable. More reliable and less noisy than their piston engine counterparts, jets saw the rise of the golden age of travel. See, in the age before the TSA or worries about terrorists, passengers could arrive at the airport 30 minutes before their flight started and expect to come on board to absolute luxury. Economy seats had, on average, 3 to 6 more inches of legroom than today. And for your meal, you could expect lobster or roast beef. As airlines sought to one-up each other with food service, 5-course meals and real glassware weren't an uncommon sight. And then came the 1970s. See, with the invention of the jumbo jet in the 1970s, like the DC-10 or the 747 and the Airline Deregulation Act of 1978, passengers could see their ticket prices fall by as much as 40%. Once the act of flying became more routine and jets became cheaper and more efficient, airlines could start dividing the market up into segments. For example, there were cheap economy fares and then more expensive business class ones. So in the 1980s, Delta launched their Medallion Services. Basically, it would provide the same seat, but with better service to their frequent flyers. And with that, business class evolved, gaining legroom, space, and eventually lie-flat seating, as British Airways did in the early 2000s. And as low-cost airlines like Southwest and JetBlue popped up, the market was further divided. Consumers now had plenty of options, say between the cheap low-cost airlines, a more expensive business class seat, or a full-out first-class ticket. But in doing so, flying had lost some of its shine. It was no longer as much of an experience, it was just a way to travel.
These days, flying can be pretty painful.
The average seat pitch, or distance between 2 points in back-to-back seats, is just about 30 inches, whereas 30 years ago, that number sat at a comfortable 33 to 34. Seat width has also reduced from around 20 to 17 inches of width. But at the same time, I think it's important to remember that flying today is still much better than flying was 30 or 40 years ago. For example, flight entertainment makes what used to be a long, boring journey much more bearable. And of course, flights have gotten cheaper. Adjusted for inflation, a flight from Boston to LA would have cost almost $5,000 with 12 stopovers in the 1940s, whereas today, direct flights can be found for just about $300. While aircraft did have smoking and non-smoking sections, since air was kept and recycled, the entire aircraft would reek of smoke. But since smoking has been banned on all US airliners since 2000, aircraft have become a much more pleasant place to be on. And as one professor at Pennsylvania's Albright College explains, passengers used to resort to getting drunk to deal with boredom, drinking more and more alcohol. And, this being the 50s, airlines would train phone operators to try and recognize African American flyers, and then put them on separate or different flights. So here's the thing, flying isn't what it used to be. We might not have the sense of fashion, or the cocktail bars, or the lobster tails. But for me, I think flying has become a symbol. It's become representative of something greater, because when I fly to go see relatives, to go on a family vacation, and as someone who's privileged enough to be able to travel, I think flying brings back a lot of excitement to me. It means I'm going to go to somewhere different, or see something new. I might find myself at a waterfall, or at the top of a mountain, or in a rope course. I might find myself at a wedding.
Where are you husband and wife? We make this the run.
And the party afterwards. Now listen, if I was a business traveler or I flew every day, I'm sure that flying would feel much more routine. But for me, there's so many things I haven't seen in this world, and flying represents a way to access some of those things. So, yeah. Now, if you'll excuse me, I do actually have a flight to catch right now, so...